Welcome, everyone. I'm Julia Barbaro. I'm here with Gino and the kids. We have Veronica, Cecilia, Laura, and Sophia. Today, we're going to be making meatballs. That's what we're doing.
And today, why are we focusing on meatballs? Because number one, we love meatballs. And number two, we're trying to cook on a budget. This is a great meal if you are trying to feed a family on a budget. We have 6 kids, so when we had to make meatballs, it was a day that Dad liked because we weren't spending a lot of money on the budget, right, Jewel?
Well, this is one of Gino's favorite topics is financing and budgeting. And so
Right?
when I proposed it, he kind of lit up a little bit. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a good one. You know, let's first get started with the meatballs, and we'll talk a little bit about budgeting. But Veronica is king. She's King Meatball in the house. That's her nickname. And
what do we got going in here, first of all?
So the thing is that I learned from your mom. I don't know what you did at the restaurant, but she would mix. So we have like maybe 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds of ground beef. We have pork. We have 1 pound of pork and 1 pound of, Sophia, what is it? Pork?
Veal.
Thank you, veal. And I like it when she made it first for me years ago. I was like, these meatballs are delicious. And she told me what it took her a while to tell me what was in it, but that's what I loved because it wasn't very greasy. The consistency from all that meat was delicious.
Let's talk about dollars here.
Well, no, we're not talking about dollars. Let's
Time
talk
out.
about the.
1 second.
Okay.
With the meat, the reason why we put pork in it, if you're Italian, this probably resonates with you. There's fat in the pork. Pork has got great flavor. Veal, there's not much flavor in veal. It gives a nice texture to it. And beef is got a great flavor as well. So when you're mixing beef and pork in, it really gives good flavor and good texture to the meatballs. Now, we're going to be doing something to the meatballs that if you're Italian, you're probably going to say to yourself, why would you do that? Bear with me. I used to make 30 pounds of meatballs a week on average at the restaurant. I couldn't sit there and fry every single meatball. Now, if you've got plenty of time, I would recommend throwing them in the frying pan and frying them, and great, and then throwing them in the sauce. But if you're on a time constraint, we're going to show you how to use scoopers, and we're going to teach you how to put them in the oven so you can walk away and do something else and let the meatballs cook without burning.
Gino, what's in the bowl? We have 4 pounds of meat.
Yep.
We have 2 cups of breadcrumbs.
Yes, and you can use gluten-free breadcrumbs. You can use panko breadcrumbs, whatever kind of breadcrumbs you want to use.
So a little learning lesson when it comes to gluten-free breadcrumbs. There's probably one that I would use. Otherwise, they get really soggy and weird. Does anyone remember what the name of those gluten-free breadcrumbs that I love is?
We're going to put that in the...
We'll post it in. So, do you remember the name of them? The brand name? No? Okay. I'll post it in there because we've tried a lot of breadcrumbs that were gluten-free and they came out really gross. I'm going to be honest. So, Trader Joe's has the best ones because there's nothing in them but wheat and that's it. So I do love Trader Joe's, but just so you know, so if you guys are listening and you want to write this down, we have 4 pounds of meat. We have 2 cups of breadcrumbs. We have 3 tablespoons of salt, which I notice Veronica always hesitates. She's like, are you sure it's this much salt? Every time, because it's a lot. We have 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of oregano, 1 cup of Parmesan cheese, 4 eggs, and 1 cup of milk, and 2 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. Does that sound right? 2 tablespoons?
A cup.
A cup. I was going to say that's definitely wrong. 1 cup of Thank you, Parmesan cheese.
And what I would say is, as you're doing this, you're seeing Veronica measuring everything outside the bowl. You never want to measure on top of the bowl because if you've got a salt shaker, you got oregano, and it opens up, it dumps right in there. And as far as undersalting everything, I would undersalt everything, but I'm going to give you a little trick on how to taste it because you really can't taste raw meat unless you're an old school Italian.
Unless you're your mother. Your mother
and they used to do that, but I really wouldn't recommend doing that. What you do is you can mix it all together, and as you're mixing it and it's done mixed, you can put a little bit of water boiling, get a little piece of the meat, throw the meat in the water as it's boiling, let the meat cook through, and then you can taste actually the meat itself there. If you think it's undersalted, then you know what, throw up a little more salt. But with this, you've got a Parmesan cheese in here. If you want to go a little bit less on the salt, I'd put a ton more Parmesan cheese. Now we're mixing it around here, huh? You could throw this in a KitchenAid mixer. I think this is much more fun for the kids. Let the kids mix it around and have a great time mixing it.
Before we get into the finance, because I want to talk about that. It's a great topic to talk about. The funniest thing to me is watching Italians, and everyone has their way of where they grew up, how their mom made meatballs, and it's a very sensitive topic.
It really is.
It's very fascinating to talk to people because once we were somewhere and my husband was making meatballs, and it's a lot. Like he said, he works at a restaurant making ridiculous amount at the same time. Of course, you need the oven. But one of the guys is like, no, you have to fry them on the pan and then put them in the sauce. Otherwise, they're not good. And it wasn't just like a recommendation. That was like his way of life. Like that was, you know what I mean? And so it's very sensitive. I've noticed a lot of Italians, especially men, are very sensitive on how meatballs are cooked. And we can either fry them on the pan, put them in the sauce and let them finish cooking, or like my husband, it's easier to do a lot of them in the oven. So
well,
that's what
you
we're
have 4
doing.
pounds of meat here, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Yeah.
to fry. And I want to know, those men that fried them, did they clean the kitchen afterwards, or did they let their wives clean the kitchen? Because that's a big mess.
Like
There's
a
a lot of
yeah.
splattering going on. Listen,
They
they're
are
great.
delicious.
They're
Yeah.
unbelievable. You get that little crust on the
Oh, it's so
outside.
good.
I could
Yeah.
talk about it all day. And then the thing is, you throw it in the sauce and you let them finish cooking in the sauce for the next 20 or 30 minutes. But that all takes time.
Yeah.
With this, we propose to make a lot. And then when you have them made, you can cook them and you can keep them in the fridge. Once they're cooked for the next 4 or 5 days, have leftovers. And guess what? Your kids are going to be getting up in the morning and having meatballs for breakfast.
Of course.
What's better than that?
The Barbaro kids and their famous breakfast. You know, so going back to the finances, we touched a little bit about this last time we did the cooking show that was about penne alla vodka. We talked about budgeting a little bit, and it really made me think, because obviously that's a big part of family life. And when the spouses are not on the same page, it could be really, really stressful. You know, I think about how it used to be and compared to now. And you figure it out. You know, a lot of times you get married and you think if you talk about it, everything will be fine. And then things happen. You have another child, you know, you go grocery shopping in stressful situations with kids, and you kind of just get what you can do at the time. And I remember years ago, and it's very different now, I just want to point that out. But years ago, I used to go grocery shopping, and my husband's like, "How much are you spending on groceries?" And because he wasn't there, he wasn't seeing what we need. He wasn't in the kitchen seeing all the food that the kids, you know, as they grew, they ate more food. And the solution was, and we didn't plan on this, but the solution was he literally started coming with us grocery shopping. And then my kids would tease him sometimes because he would spend more money than I did at the grocery store. It's like, a little different. So that was always a fun thing. But so a lot of times we give our spouse a hard time. They're spending too much money. I encourage you, go together and maybe even cook together. So it's like, oh, this is how much we're using. This is how much the kids are eating, you know, because a lot of times when we can't see something, we don't understand it. And it's very easy to get irritated at each other. So that's just my little tip, is go together and actually have a conversation about it. Be open about it. Be honest about it, because finances really can weigh on a marriage.
So finance-wise, there's 4 pounds of meat in here. It's, let's say, on average, if you buy chopped meat, you can buy organic chopped meat on sale for $6 a pound. You have the pork in there around the same. So if you're spending $25 on the meat here, you probably have another couple dollars worth of Parmesan cheese, another couple dollars. So you're at $30 on average for what we have in this bowl. Remember, there's 4 pounds. On average, a person who eats a significant amount probably can get between 8 and 10 ounces of meat. That should be enough for them. Maybe if you want to go to a pound, that's a lot of meatballs for a pound. But on average, you could probably feed 6 to 8 people out of here. So if you're feeding 6 to 8 people out of here, think about that. Divided by 30, it's 30 divided by 6. It's $5 per person. If you want to throw some sauce, there's an extra few bucks for the sauce, and maybe you want to put some rice or some pasta as a filler and a little bit of salad, you're at $35 to $40 for a meal for 6 people. That's a great way to save some money and have something healthy. Now, what I want to show you guys right here, we have some olive oil, and the olive oil here is going to be used when you're rolling these meatballs. Now, Laura's got the scooper here. She can start scoop one. I'm going to show you how to do one. You can scoop it and then throw it here. Yeah. And then what I'll do is I'm going to put a little bit of oil in my hand so they don't stick. And then I'm going to press, 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 and then roll. Right? So you keep the meat nice and tight and roll. And then you have the meatball here. And what's great is look how beautiful this looks. It's all uniform. We put it here. And then the reason why we have the scooper is they're going to try to have all the same sizes. If you make a meatball too small and you make a meatball too big, then what happens is one cooks too well and one doesn't cook enough. So the reason why I use the scooper is you try to keep them uniform size. So I'm going to do it one more time. Press, 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 then roll. You do a little bit of game there, and then put it like that. You see how nice those are? Keep going, guys.
Gino, can you tell the story of when? Because we were talking about budgeting, and we talk about, you know, the spouse is learning how to budget together as a couple. But when we involve the kids a little bit, it's interesting when their eyes are open. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. When we moved to
You know
Florida
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
a few years ago, I remember we would go up in New York. We had Trader Joe's, we had Whole Foods, we had up in New York Stop and Shop. And I remember having to drive a lot. But when we moved here, 0.3 miles across the street, we had a Publix. And miss baby. And Publix was so expensive back in the day. I remember, but it was so convenient. So every time we'd run across the street and go, we're gonna get this item, we're gonna get that item. And $200 later, so I started tracking really diligently all of our budget. And I remember doing a monthly budget and saying $3,000 a month. We're not going to go above it. And I remember my kids looking at it, and my son Michael, when they come back, it was like the 22nd of the month. And he's like, Dad, we're over the budget for $3,000. And I hear Julia in the background going, what are you guys talking about? And she got so insulted. All I was doing, I was trying to teach my kids how much money is spent on food. And that actually led to a great thing for me is I started going to Costco, believe it or not. I went and got my Costco membership, and I'm like, yeah. And then we go to Costco and spend like $800 like a month, but that was one big shopping, and we get a lot of stuff. And they're going to Walmart. Believe it or not, Walmart down here in the South, where you're talking about basically organic foods and stuff, they have some great products in Walmart. So go out and go shop, find the grocery stores. It is convenient to have something across the street, isn't
100%.
it? But at the same time, when you're paying $7 for a dozen eggs, but I can buy a dozen of eggs, the same thing at Walmart for $3.50, we're trying to teach the kids being conscious with money. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. What you're trying to do is you're trying not to waste it. You're trying to save the money, ultimately to why.
Well, I think it's, well, that's what you just said. You used the word waste, because a lot of times we do waste. We buy all this food, maybe we get busy, and then we don't use it, and we have to throw it away. And that, I feel like, because I personally did that early on in our marriage, because I wasn't used to, first of all, that's new, right? When you're out of your house, all of a sudden now you are responsible for groceries. You're responsible for when you're cooking, what you're cooking, and it's all new. And like I say, sometimes our life does not come with a manual. We have to figure it out the hard way many times. And one of them is how much stuff do I buy? How much am I cooking? You know, maybe you realize you bought chicken or meatballs to make meatballs, and it wasn't enough for your family. Maybe it was like way too much for your family. And so a lot of it is trial and error. And my recommendation is this, especially when it comes to a marriage, and maybe one of them is more on the budgeting than the other. Go easy on each other. Really, just have the conversation and be like, listen, I noticed that we had way too much for dinner last night and you didn't use it as leftovers. You know, what can we do differently next time? Because, you know, when we make mistakes, a lot of times we just continue to make the mistakes over and over again.
I'm going to give everybody a good tip on going shopping with your family.
I got you your own wine today.
You got me your own wine.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
Yours.
Bring cash. Bring $100 or $200 cash with you. And go shopping and go through the store and don't use your credit card. What I would do is see how much things cost. And then all of a sudden, when you have credit, you're not really being conscious. You're not being aware of what you're spending. But the great thing about it is when you bring cash, it's all of a sudden, am I spending too much? Am I overspending? Do I really need this item?
Yeah.
And that's just a good lesson for the children, because it's easy to go to the store, throw it on a credit card, and not really understand what the value of money is. It's almost fake to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're playing these Monopoly games now, and all of a sudden the cash is out of Monopoly, and you have Monopoly games with credit. I hate that, because the kids have to understand the value of money, how something costs. So for them to go through the store and to be able to say, hey, $4 for these crackers, $8 for these peaches, I have $12, I only have $20, I can only buy $8 more. It's such a great learning lesson for them.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah, and that's why I do. I know we talked about this last time. We did talk about this last time, but it is something good to remind each other, is go shopping together. Whether it's just you and your spouse, whether it's you and your kids, let them see how much stuff costs. Let them see the bill at the end, because that's so important. And, you know, when we talk about budgeting, Gino, how did you find the best way to teach the kids? Because we always talk about, you know, you teach your kids this, we could talk to them as much as we want, but as far as like learning lessons, what worked the best
for budgeting for us? I think the best thing was I always early on made mistakes with my older kids, and every time grandma or somebody would give them money, I'd throw it right into the bank. Okay. And you can't teach kids saving when they're 7 or 8 or 10 years old. It's almost as if it's being punitive.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you taking my money away from me? Well, I'm saving it for you. That concept is not understandable to them. So what I would do is I would try to put buckets. We had little plastic jars. Remember that? And we have saving, spending, charity, and like, you know, have fun with this kind of money. So they could see in each jar where their money was going. So you have that money saved. What would it be saved for? Yeah. For a rainy day, or, you know, to go buy a toy or something. And then their spending money would be, that's the fun part. And then charity, obviously you'd want them to do it. We used to have a lot of charitable donations to the friars, the Franciscan friars. So we'd give that money as charity so the kids would see that. And they'd be able to have control over their money. And they'd be able to say to themselves, well, this is what I want to do with this money. It's mine. Let me spend it. Because ultimately it is theirs. And we're trying to have our children make decisions as they get older to be able to make decisions for themselves. Because when they're adults, we're not there with it anymore. So you're trying to instill these habits at a young age.
And two, we want them to have a positive view on money. Because a lot of times we put on our children, like our fears and our views on money, and we kind of just hand it over to our children without even realizing it, because it's how we react to it. You know, like like you used to react when I used to spend too much money on groceries. The kids, they understand that because they picked it up. And just to understand where and why you have views of certain money. What's the book that you love? The
Richest Man in Babylon, or there's the Psychology of Money. Understanding your relationship with money. It took me a long time. I grew up in a scarcity mindset. My mom was always about save, save, save. So when I saw these big bills go out, all of a sudden I'm like, well, we're spending too much.
And my mom was always about spend, spend, spend. So that's why.
Clash of the Titans. We're going to put the meatballs in the oven at 425 degrees for about 30 minutes. We're putting a little water in here so the pan doesn't burn on the bottom. This should take about 30 minutes. You want it to be about 160 degrees internal temperature.
We are back. Veronica is going to get the meatballs out. We did check the internal temperature, as my husband always loves to check, is, what is it? 160?
She makes fun of me, but she doesn't know the temperature.
I literally cut things in half.
What happens is she cut it in half and it looked ready. You should do about 160 degrees for beef. 150, if you pull them out at 150, they'll cook another couple more degrees. And if you're really unsure, throw them in the sauce and let them cook.
So what's happening now? Veronica, you're going, she's also making pasta. I want to actually ask you about that in a second. But we're going to put the meatballs into the sauce because it just obviously, you know, they have to cook for a few minutes together. Would you? This is me as a home chef. What I do is I put them into the sauce. I let them cook for another, 3 or 4 minutes. Is that accurate?
Yes.
According to the professional.
What I would do as a home chef is, if you're not going to use them all, don't put them all in the sauce. Put whatever you want so you can keep the sauce with the meatballs. And if there's some that aren't in the sauce, you can leave them, let them cool off, wrap them, put them in the fridge, and then use them again. Or you could throw them all together, whatever is not used.
I put them in the fridge with the sauce too.
You could do that, but you just want to make sure that you cool them down. You don't want them sitting out too long, hot. You want them to really cool off. But right now they're out. The sauce is hot. The meatballs are hot. Pasta takes about 7-8 minutes to cook.
Here's my question. Okay, because the Americans, we talk about spaghetti and meatballs. Lady and the Tramp. That's where the whole, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's a movie. It's a Disney movie.
I do.
Okay, and it's a big deal, spaghetti and meatballs. And I didn't know until I met my husband and his family. Is that actually not as a traditional Italian thing? Because everything was separate. You get your family was into the rigatoni, so they would do separate rigatoni, and then you get the meatballs later. So there
was a movie years ago by the guy who did the Monk Show, and he had a restaurant with his brother, and they were Italians, and they were back in the 30s or 40s. And what they would do is they'd try to cater to the Americans. Italians use very little sauce. They separate things. The Americans love sauce, love cheese. So really what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to have the pasta first by itself with a little bit of sauce, and then you have the meat. So you have spaghetti with sauce. You're done with that, and then you have the meat. The problem is it takes 3 hours to have lunch. Who has 3 hours to eat lunch? So what we do as Americans, we just throw spaghetti in one plate, meatballs in the other. We put everything together. There's nothing wrong with that, but as an Italian, that's forbidden in Italy. You'll never see them do that in Italy, ever.
I had to ask you about that because I think it's fascinating that what we do here in America is very different than what you grew up and what the Italians actually do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there should be very little sauce involved with pasta. What you do is you get the pasta, you drain it. I would put some sauce in the pan, put the sauce in, a little cheese, and then toss the pasta and wet the pasta with the sauce completely. Then put it in a bowl, and you can put a little more sauce on top. That's all it should be.
Yes, no, but these are delicious, and I know, like I said, I haven't made meatballs probably in 2 years because
The kids make
One of the
them.
things, this is an easy recipe. This is something easy that the kids can make.
Yes.
Just show them how to do it, teach them how to do it, and then let go of it. Let them do it, because Veronica has made them for quite some time. Cecilia made them last week when Veronica was away, and they're delicious.
They're
I mean,
really
let
good.
the kids make this. This is so easy for them. They will eat more. Veronica is making her pasta. Veronica, don't put the pasta and the meatballs together. I feel like you're half me and half daddy, so we'll see what happens. Traditionally, like you said, you have the pasta first and then the meatballs, maybe the salad or some kind of vegetable. And I agree with that. But maybe on a Sunday, I feel like our busy lives does take away from that long Italian meal that I absolutely, completely love. So if we could get it once a week, I think that's awesome. But Veronica is plating. She's making capellini, so we're plating that, and she's also going to plate a separate dish with the meatballs
For me. And I'll have
I
a little
love it.
pasta on the side, and I'll have my meatballs together.
Yes, traditional Italian boy over here. Yeah. Veronica, let's see how it came out. Looks amazing. Looks beautiful. Incredible.
Right here.
Look at
Take
this.
this. You try that.
What are we missing, Laura?
Oh, yeah.
There it is. Some nice fresh Parmesan cheese. Delicious.
Throw it over there.
Really
Throw
put some
some
in
on
the
the
pasta
pasta.
as well. Let's have the
No, I'm
taste
going to try
tester.
the sauce first. Look how beautiful the sauce looks. Mmm. Meatballs, guys, they taste wonderful. Now, one critique on the meatballs, a good critique, they're soft. They're not like rocks. And the reason why they're soft is when you put the milk in and you don't put too much breadcrumbs, it makes it really soft. And if you don't overcook them, they come out really good. Here, I'll give you a little piece like this, baby. You go ahead. How does that look? It looks really good. It tastes really good.
Just want to thank everyone for watching. I'm encouraging you to like our page, share our page, give us a comment, give us a recommendation for next time, what you want to see us cooking, what you want to see us talking about. My husband and I can't wait to see you next time.
I love to hear the comments down below. Who likes to fry their meatballs
Oh, that's a
versus
good one.
put meatballs in the oven?
Yes, I love that.
I like the frying, but as you can see, when you've got a lot of kids and everyone's hungry, we just want to get them in the oven, in and out as quick as possible. So once again, thanks for watching the Julia and Gino Cooking Show, and we'll see you next time.